one.
Usually you do your music. You do your music track first.
The music track was already gone.
It's been going for a while.
You're listening to episode 150 of PHP Ugly. I'm your host.
And we're still amateurs.
Absolutely. I'm your host, Tom Rideout. With me, as always, the consummate professional, Eric Van Johnson.
Hello, everybody.
Consummate professional that was talking over you during your intro.
Absolutely. And the CrossFit vegan disc golf frisbee catcher himself, John Congdon.
No CrossFit in there yet. Maybe one day.
You get an extra. It's like the Game of Thrones Meisters. You get a ring on your collar for every one of those hippie things you do.
More and more hippie-ish every day.
How you guys doing this week?
Fantastic.
Been an interesting week so far, but okay, I guess.
Interesting.
Really? Well, okay. So
yes, I know what. Really, I'm trying to prompt
let's get
your
out of the way real quick because I do want to state something really fast. So those that long-time listeners to the show will know that I live in the DiegoDev offices, and therefore, by extension, PHP Ugly offices are here in a little suburb of San Diego called Poway, California, and we had a really, really unfortunate event over the weekend where we had a synagogue shooting. And man, I tell you, the world we live in is just getting so crazy. But I just wanted to just say real fast that, obviously this shit's got to stop. These crazy people just killing people because they don't agree with, they don't think how they want them to think is got to stop. But the people who were involved with this, our hearts go out to you. Our thoughts are with you. Poway is a pretty small town here. There's been a bunch of vigils and a bunch of people getting together trying to, get past it. And again, if you've listened to the show long enough, my daughter ran for mayor for Poway, and it was an interesting election. But I'm not gonna lie, I'm glad this isn't something she needs to deal with. It was
no kidding,
man. It was shocking. And just the day where we live right now with the internet and stuff, it's so crazy. Like, I got the information before I even heard it on the radio or the news. I was walking my dog. We have a little routine we do on the weekend, and I had a friend of mine who lives in New Jersey start messaging me over Facebook. Hey, is everything okay? I'm happy your daughter, doesn't have to deal with this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like trying to read the message, and it's like, wow, there was another synagogue shooting. That's horrible. But I couldn't figure out why he was messaging me about it. And then I realized the place it happened is literally up the street from where I'm at right now. I mean, it is like a 10-minute drive from my current location. And what's that, John?
I was going to say something that I haven't shared with you yet is I was out with my kids that day, and on my way home, I passed a street here in my town, and there were tons of cops there. It was all roped off, and I'm like, that's weird. I wonder what's going on. I'm thinking drug bust or something. And I get home and I hear about the synagogue shooting, and it turns out the shooter is just up the street from me. So that's...
No, he was a son of some really popular teacher at the high school by your house.
Yeah, right around the corner from my house. Yep.
It was amazing.
Scary too. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it was nuts. So, anyways, hearts go out to everybody involved. My wife, where my wife works, there were some of the people she works with were at the synagogue. I mean, it's a pretty popular synagogue. There aren't a lot in Poway, and he was actually there. It was Passover, and they were doing their routine, whatever. I mean, I'm not Jewish. I don't know what the routine is, but but one of the steps they do is they start to memorialize the people who they had lost that year, and his wife was actually one of them, and then to have this happen is just horrible. So yeah, interesting week. I mean, a really interesting start of the week, and it was crazy. But just want to let everybody know, your heart, we're with you on this, and both my daughters, attended several vigils and group gatherings on it. But and then of course, again, as crazy as the world is, a couple days later, there's another incident across the country, and it's like, okay, let's move on to the next weird, crazy local shooting, and it's horrible.
And that's all horrible timing as far as it shouldn't be happening anyway, but I'm now in the process of registering my kid for kindergarten, and it's just bringing all those like fears back up. I mean, it happens often enough anyway with these mass shootings at schools, but to know that it's happened at elementary schools in the past, and more and more of these things happening just makes it so scary to send your kids out.
It just takes one unstable person. There's no rhyme or reason to it. I mean, there's just no rhyme or reason. It's insane. Yeah, I get you, John.
Yeah. All right. This has been your depressing section of the show. No doom and gloom. Doom and gloom out of the way.
Yeah, I got nothing but that this week.
I sniped Thomas's doom and gloom. Sorry about that, buddy.
That's all right.
Okay, pull us out of this this funk. What do you got going on? Thomas, you mentioned before the show you saw Endgames.
So no spoilers, I promise. Just finished up Endgame.
I'm spilling the beans. What's up?
It is an exhausting endeavor. I mean, I can say that just without a doubt. No matter how you feel about what happens in the movie, sitting for 3 hours through this just epically scoped thing is just exhausting.
Yeah, but you have the ability to turn it into like 6 hours because I'm sure it wasn't at a theater.
No, it was absolutely at a theater. I haven't been able to get a good
Really?
copy.
Wow, I'm surprised.
Yeah, the Marvel series is one of the series I go see in theaters, where the sound production really matters and the scope of the screen really matters. And
I was about to say that. This is definitely one of those movies. Even if you're the type of person who waits for things to come out before watching them, this is one of those movies that you probably want to see in a theater at least once.
Yeah, I tried getting Eric to go earlier this week, and he refused to go with me.
I heard a different story. I heard a slightly different story.
No, you didn't.
I will say, as a comic book fan, I don't know. I have my series I read right now, but I remember when I was younger, there were certain comics that came out that would they would team up, or they would have these large groups. Like Secret Wars was one of them, where there were this large group of superheroes, large group of villains who were all fighting, and they would have these like 2-page spreads of battles where it's all one large image of all the stuff happening, and you would look at.
That was a big complaint with the Civil War movie, was that the epic battle was like 10 people.
Right.
And you're like if you see the 2-page spread from the Civil War comic, it's gigantic. It's got
Yeah.
everyone. It's got the X-Men. It's got everyone in it. And I think they really resolved that in this one. The scale seems appropriate for comics.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. That it would be like this layout that, as a fan of comics, you would sit there and look at for like an hour or two, and just look at all the details and all the people who are a part of it. And
it's like Where's Waldo for comic nerds.
Exactly, and you
Yeah.
definitely get that sense in this movie. It's like you want to. There are certain scenes that I'm looking forward to pausing and just looking at and saying, okay,
Yeah.
what all is happening in this scene, because there's so much stuff going on.
Yeah, there's definitely stuff to nitpick, but overall the experience was pretty fantastic.
Yeah, it was cool. How long does a movie have to be out before we can start giving spoilers?
I believe the moratorium now is a month, although it might be different for this one.
Smokes, a month?
So there was some conversation about this on Reddit, because Game of Thrones and Avengers Endgame both had very gigantic releases this weekend. And if you went on Reddit, Game of Thrones, everyone was talking about it openly. No one cared about spoilers. It wasn't a thing. And if you tried to spoil Endgame in some way, you were banned from Reddit for a while. Like, it was just a no-no. And people were wondering, well, what's the difference between the two? And the difference is that everyone who wants to watch Game of Thrones the night that it happens or the minute that it happens basically can. Like, if you have a means to watch it whatsoever, then you have a means to watch it either that night or the next morning or the next afternoon, because you have it on DVR or you have it on HBO Now. No one is like struggling to find the time to sit down for 3 hours in a theater that isn't crowded at a time that's at someone else's leisure. You know, Game of Thrones just it runs on a different schedule.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But also an epic episode. A lot of people very upset about Game of Thrones, though.
Yeah, the wife and kids got into Game of Thrones. I actually was into it the first couple seasons, and then I dropped out. I just couldn't keep up with it. And then the wife and kids marathoned it like last winter or something, and kind of burned through it got through the whole series, and they're up to, as far as I know, they're up to the current stuff as well. So, but I haven't watched it. I haven't watched it. Even if I had watched it, I probably wouldn't cared as much, because I don't know anything that's going on anymore.
Well, the biggest complaint was that the lighting was poor.
What?
It was almost so. The whole episode was. This is not a spoiler. The whole episode was a battle, a single battle. It was an hour and a half of combat, and it was hard to see a lot of what was going on in certain points of the show.
Oh, really?
And then there's this question of like, well, if you've got there's an army of 100,000 or 200,000 strong, and they line everybody up and they get ready for this big battle, and anyone who has any experience in military tactics looked at it and went, "That's not right." And so you've got all these armchair historians on Reddit complaining that it's completely inaccurate, and why would anyone do this, and it's horrible and stupid, and people love to bitch and moan and complain.
On the internet? No.
I enjoyed it.
I know this isn't ugly movie reviews, but I do have one more question about something, and then we can move on from just doing reviews of things.
Sure.
This is going to sound silly, and you think I would know this as a geek and internet and computer person, but YouTube. So I understand movies and TV shows, depending on where you're at in the country, get released differently on different schedules. It might not actually be in certain countries, and all that. But things on YouTube, that's like consistent, right? Like if you see something on YouTube, it's like it's on the internet. They don't change.
Oh yeah.
They do. So there could be things on YouTube here in the U.S. that aren't on YouTube other places.
Quite a bit, yeah.
I was gonna say I came across a new series on YouTube that I think you'd like, Thomas. But I wasn't gonna say anything because I know we have a international audience, but I'm going to say something now since we're talking about it. There's a YouTube series called Dust, D-U-S-T, and it's all these like sci-fi short stories, kind of like the I Love Robots one on Netflix.
The Love, Death, Robots.
Love, Death, Robots. That's it. Yeah, it's kind of like that. Really high quality sci-fi done. I guess it's been going for. I love finding channels like this. I guess it's been going for a couple years, and they're like 15-minute sci-fi shorts, 15, 20 minutes, and I have like a few years worth to watch, which is kind of cool. And again, because they're shorts, you don't have to watch them in any order or anything. They're just kind of random short stories, but you'll like it, Thomas and John.
Well, see, the first thing they have here is a trailer for the movie Prospect, which is a movie that I have but haven't watched yet.
What? I don't know what Prospect is. I don't know if I've actually looked at the channel. It just started showing up in my stream. I didn't actually. What's Prospect? A movie. Is it about baseball?
No, it's about
come on, John.
People farming on foreign planets, finding an alien species. And probably, I don't think it's in English.
Interesting.
Yeah, but I'll have to check this out. They've got a lot of stuff.
Well, it's got a ton of content. Ton of stuff.
Yeah, there's hundreds of videos.
We discovered something fun today. We were having a meeting here at DiegoDev, and everybody's remote, so all our meetings are typically online. And we use Google Hangouts, or well, actually now we use Google Meeting. And we're in a meeting, and somebody discovered that in meetings and Google Meetings, which is like the Google Hangout thing to share screens and stuff, it does real-time closed caption. You can actually turn closed caption on.
That's terrifying.
That's what we thought. I mean, it was already you already kind of knew like you were being recorded and you're going into some database somewhere, but I mean, it was doing real-time closed caption, and it was pretty spot on. I've got to applaud its accuracy. It even bleeped out curse words. It was interesting.
Can you turn that off?
No, I keep it on now by default. It's
no. Can you turn off the bleeping? Like
I don't. No, I didn't see anything. I didn't look that deep into it, so I didn't see anything.
Yeah, I don't like that at all.
Why don't you like it?
Well, because that means that there's a transcript of every conversation, and that the transcript is in the database and indexed by keywords.
That's what I said. I'm like, I want the transcripts now. Like, I want to be able to just, after a meeting, say download transcript. Right?
I think you can.
I couldn't find an option to do that.
Maybe
after the meeting, it's something that pops up and I just never noticed it, because after the meeting, it goes to another screen and there are other things on there. I know it shows like your future upcoming meetings and stuff, but I think it would be, from a business perspective, I think it would be great to have the ability to download a transcript of the meeting you were just in. I would totally jump on board with that.
Thomas, you're saying that's terrifying, but you have devices in your house and the same thing already.
That's true.
Yeah, no, I'm not happy about that either.
Devices on your person, they're probably doing it too.
Still, not happy about it.
And yet you use them.
Yeah. I'm getting so close to getting away from Facebook. I know it's a weekly update. Has Tom deleted his Facebook? I still haven't, but Jesus, man, I'm considering now writing something to create a Facebook profile that doesn't disclose anything about me. Try to like kill my existing Facebook profile and create a new one that is intentionally obfuscated in some way.
I mean, what's the purpose of it? Like I said, well, I mentioned earlier. So I'm pretty much, I consider myself pretty much off Facebook. I popped on this week specifically to wish my wife a happy birthday. That was the reason I was on Facebook. My wife
You
still
realize you live with her, right?
yeah, but you have to publicly announce it, otherwise everybody's like, Beck's husband's a jerk because he didn't say anything on Facebook.
One
Yeah,
thing
it's
Becky
just
and I have in common, we hate that. Like, she won't do that for me, and I don't do that for her.
That's the modern
Yeah.
equivalent of sending flowers to her office.
Right? It totally is.
Yeah, you just say, look,
Jackie would
I-
hate it.
I spent 10 minutes organizing this surprise that isn't that surprising.
Yeah. And I wasn't even like the first to wish her happy birthday on Facebook. It was like much later in the day, and I'm like, yeah, I guess I should write something about on Facebook.
I did notice that I beat you to it, which I thought was funny.
Yeah, yeah. But what I was going to say is, and like I said, my wife still uses it for like messaging. Like she uses Facebook and she'll use the messaging service. But again, the friend that I have who I literally never speak with, he was somebody I worked with years ago. We stay in touch through Facebook. He messages me from Jersey about the incident here in Poway. Things like that happen, and I realize it's like, God damn it, I need to keep a presence on Facebook. That's why I was about to say, Thomas, I don't know if I would delete your account because there's still some validity of having that presence on Facebook. Just do what I do and just don't use the product. And yeah, I just get the notifications on messaging, and if somebody mentions me in a post by chance, I'll get that notification. But just
Well,
don't.
but then I mean, you're using the product either way. If you have a phone on you or if you have a device. I mean, the thing that gets me is the Facebook cookies on all of the shopping and ancillary websites. Is that you're still using Facebook when you're on Amazon because it knows what you bought and it knows what things you're shopping for.
Well, that's why I said I logged out of Facebook, except for I use Firefox with the Facebook container now. It's the only place I go to Facebook.
There has been a pretty good amount of evidence showing that that doesn't stop it. That they can fingerprint people well enough that it doesn't help.
Well, that's my best effort. But I don't know, man. I mean, I tried. Yeah, I quit Facebook, and like I said, I still consider myself quote unquote quitting Facebook. Have quit Facebook. I mean, I don't use it. I think I have an Instagram that that will automatically feed into it from time to time when I remember to post on Instagram. But for the most part, I don't, and I'm missing it less and less. What's that?
You actually post on Instagram?
I try to. So that's my thing is I actually have a if this then that account where if I post to Instagram, it will post it to Twitter, and then Instagram automatically posts to Facebook. And I try to remember, like when I'm taking a picture or something, to do that because it kind of keeps that Facebook feed going for anybody who's interested. But yeah, occasionally I'll do it. It's very rare.
Yeah, I just get in trouble anytime I post on Facebook, so I tend not to.
He just stays within his vegan recipe group, and that's it.
My wife doesn't agree with some of the stuff I post at times.
I bought myself something that I've been putting off actually buying for myself for like 10 years now because it's just such a toy, and I feel weird buying toys for myself.
What's that?
I bought myself a lockpick set.
Oh,
So I've got
fun
for
geeky stuff.
Yeah, for the podcast listeners and not the video listeners, I've got this full pouch of dozens of lockpicking tools, and then I got a practice lock that is
it
clear.
clear?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can see the pins and stuff through it, and it's an excellent fidget toy, for sure.
Yeah.
At
Yeah,
the
I've
very
al-
at the very
always
least, it's on my
wanted those.
desk and I play with it. But it's a surprisingly easy thing to get reasonably good at, and makes you wonder what the point of locks on anything is.
Yes.
Speaking of locks, I saw one of the stupidest infomercials for a new way to secure your door, and it was basically a piece of metal at the bottom of the door with uh, a molded piece that slides into that and then slides into the floor. And I don't know if we are now.
The
completely
anti-kick thing.
Yeah, but what? What's going
Okay,
on?
so Eric is now a sock puppet.
Okay,
What?
so anyway, I'm watching this infomercial and they're showing them like trying to kick the door, trying to crowbar the door, trying to do something under the door. I'm like, all you need is a long piece of metal to kind of curve under the door, and you pop that thing up and out. It's just
Yeah, or a
silly.
window.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing that always gets me is securing doors and having windows next to your door, and how horrifying Eric looks right now.
We're audio podcast. Nobody knows what you're talking about.
So right now, Eric is dressed up like Donald Trump in
We're the
some fashion.
best. We're the best podcast.
Ugh, that is terrifying.
Oh, I got better ones.
Well, I
here's
follow
my
the.
favorite. Who wants to
I
see
follow
my
the. I don't. I follow the lockpicking lawyer on YouTube, and he goes through stuff very quickly. Uh,
Oh, get him.
is this a new toy that you've acquired?
Snapchat has a thing you can put on your computer, and it allows you to take your webcam and do all sorts of geeky things with it. I'm not a Snapchat user, but
We are now.
yeah. Now I'm a sock puppet. This is how I should just do the podcast every week. Like
That's
audio
how you
listeners-
should do almost every interaction.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, audio listeners, it doesn't affect their stream at all. They wouldn't know any better. But the YouTube people who turn into YouTube, yeah, they would appreciate this update. Looks good. I like this one. And then of course Batman. Batman might be my favorite. I don't know. I always have to talk like this when this one comes on.
Have you guys followed the PHP controversy this week?
No.
Ugh.
What controversy, Thomas? Tell me.
The deprecation of the short tags.
Deprecation of the short tags. Why is this controversy? I thought this was something that was decided on some time back.
Well, I believe it is decided now, but now that it's decided, everyone's coming out of the woodwork to argue about how horrible a change this is and provide examples. Basically, instead of less than $ PHP, you can also just say less than dollars or less than question mark.
Question mark, yeah, $sign. I'm like $sign.
Not $sign. And somebody decided that this was bad old shorthand that shouldn't be used anymore and has deprecated it in the newer, I think the 8 release. And a lot of people are just wondering why. Why create a backwards compatible breaking change for the sake of some people don't like it?
Mm-hmm.
And that's really where the argument breaks. I mean, it's simple to create a code linter to fix your stuff, but it's not so simple to fix it on libraries that are old and libraries that don't need compatibility checks all the time that we're using it.
So let me ask the
It's
question:
not.
does this include is the scope of this include the question mark equal as far
No.
as
So
does
the short echo is not going to deprecate. That is less than question mark equal, and anything you type after that is just an echo to whatever your standard out is, and that's not affected at all by this, which makes sense for template engines, but kind of makes it more confusing because, hey, if you're going to get rid of short tags, why not get rid of all the short tags?
okay.
It's not a security thing, right? I mean, I know it's turned off by
Nope.
default. Most people don't use it.
It's purely just yeah, I don't like it, so let's get rid of it
I
decision.
mean, the whole comment about old libraries isn't super valid to me because most people have short tags disabled anyway.
Yeah.
It's
Uh,
disabled by default in your INI. So
but in
that,
a larger corporation that's been using internal libraries for an extended period of time, they might have libraries that were created a long time ago that use this.
mhm.
I don't know. Where do you guys fall on it?
It really is a style change, and I don't like it.
There's no valid reason that I can see to deprecate and remove it.
Yeah,
And,
I agree. I mean, if it's not hurting anything, if it's not a security vulnerability, if it's not blocking any future development, like, oh, we can't do this because we're trying to support this old convention, then who cares if it's there?
Is it improving performance by not having it in the code base?
But even if it's well, in the code
In
base,
in the yeah.
yeah.
so the reasoning in the RFC is that the documentation discourages the usage anyways. It clashes with XML, which is a non-issue. It depends on an INI directive, and as such is not portable. And if you execute this short open tag on a system that doesn't support it, it will dump the contents of the file. So that's a quote unquote security issue.
I
Well,
kind of see
those
that
are
argument.
some good points. I like
I,
the fact that it's an INI change. So if you're writing a library, it's not going to be portable. It's
Sure,
valid.
but there's no reason if it's already being discussed in the documentation as something that's possible but not recommended, then you've done all the deprecation you need.
Yeah, but I get the whole dumping PHP files as well. I mean, that's a pretty big thing, and I've seen that mistake happen time and time again.
Yeah.
I've seen that mistake, but not with short tags. I've seen it just with typos.
No, I've
And I
seen it
mean
with
it.
short tags. Yeah,
If you disable short tags in your INI and you try using it, it doesn't work.
yeah.
Right.
So say you're migrating your website from one server to the other, and the new server has short tags disabled, but you don't realize that, and you deploy your site, and where it really hurts is if your site isn't consistent. Like you see this a lot with legacy sites where certain developers didn't use short tags, others did, and so maybe the home page loads fine. Like most of the pages load fine, then all of a sudden you hit that one page by that one developer who used a short tag, and it's puking out your database connection string.
Well, I see your argument. However, right now the PHP INI default is to allow short open tags, and this RFC would change the default to disallow.
That's not correct.
That's what it states in the RFC.
If I have
So,
not, every deploy I've done of PHP over the last recent years, short tags have always been disabled. And I know this because we had a client that had short tags that we had to make it part of the build process to go in and enable short tags.
see, that would be a decision from the distribution, not a decision from PHP, because in the RFC it says change the PHP INI default to disallow short tags.
I support
So
that. Mm.
but if they're going to complain about it being a security issue with it dumping the code, it wouldn't have done that until this RFC. So
Hmm.
this RFC introduces the security issue that they're saying is they're being addressed.
Yeah, I'll,
I
I was on board with you. I was on your side, Thomas.
Well,
Initially,
no, my side. I haven't said my side.
well, then I was on the side of, don't get rid of it if it's not hurting anybody. But after after talking about it a little bit, it's like, yeah, it does pose a problem.
Yeah, he's right. The short open tag is default on.
So, here's my side. The deprecation starts in 7.4, which is the next upcoming major revision, or the minor revision. And the support for short tags is completely removed from 8.0. And that, I think, is awesome. I think massive changes to PHP's code quality, code style quality should be done in an 8.0 branch. I think 8.0 should be so different from 7 as to really validate the full version number. And if we want to address the issues that are long term in the PHP environment, a full version number is the place to do it. We're in this super fast-paced release cycle now, and I would like to see the release cycle slow down to where we had it with the 5 days, where there's the long-term support, which is the 7.4 or 7 branch, and then the bleeding edge, which is the 8 branch, and implement functionality to support multiple versions of PHP natively, which is another RFC that's coming up, which is built-in support for multiple versions of PHP. So I think this is great because I want to see 8 be as futuristic, high quality as possible. I want to see all the crap that people have complained about for 20 years just gone.
Yeah, that's a good argument. And again, if you're doing a migration to a major release, it's really on your shoulders to make sure that your code is compliant. I mean, yeah.
Now, I think that means supporting the 7 branch longer than they currently plan to. Maybe another year or 2 longer, but that's not too bad. And it's not like this hasn't happened in languages before. We've seen C or C++ go huge changes over versions. Python, I think, has the modern Python versus old Python. Is it 4 versus 5? So
3 versus 2.
Yeah, so I don't have a problem with dramatic changes. And I agree that removing the short tag is fine. Having standardized tagging methodology is great to me. But, I have to take the devil's advocate position just to get the conversation rolling.
No, you talked me back around on it. You're right. And a major release is the time to do that. If it's agreed upon that it's something the community of developers who support PHP want, and that's really what we're talking about, is the developers of PHP, not people who develop using PHP.
Well, and not the people who support WordPress sites.
Right, yeah. And yeah, if they decide that it's something they don't want to support anymore, and they all agree to it, a major release is definitely the place to do it. So speaking of new features in PHP, I don't know if you guys are looking at Trello anymore. We used to use Trello. It's hard to say if we still do or not, but every now and then we post things. But I added the PHP list shorthand. Have you guys seen this yet?
Yeah, it came in with 7, right?
Right. And I think we talked about it once before, but it's so the reason that I thought about this is because we're talking about getting confused by syntax, and it's like this is one of those things that the more I look at it, the more I appreciate it. But my initial reaction of it is, well, that's way too confusing, because the new shorthand for the PHP list function is basically the same as the shorthand for the array. It's
Right.
brackets, right? It's just a
Well,
matter of how you use them.
right. It's because you're basically taking an array and breaking it down into pieces and parts.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So it looks like if you were to look at it, it looks like a array assignment in reverse, right?
Mhm.
Where the list is on the left and the variables on the right. And
So
it's
just to back up, the list function, or uh, they correct it here too, the language construct. On the left side, you do list and then a list of variables. This
right.
example is name, age, whatever, equals, and then you would have an array on the right hand side, or a function that returns an array. And you assume that name is in index 0, age is in index 1, so on and so forth. So it's a way of taking what's in an array and breaking it down into individual variables.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and now the last time we discussed this, I was saying that I use this now. It's a new thing that I use. Over the last 10 years or so, 15 years actually, I've seen a lot of junior developers come in that use this format of list and then equals and then a result set.
Mhm.
And I never really adopted to it. And I believe that it's a Java thing that got ported into PHP.
Mm,
And that
so-
most Java classes teach this as the way to do it. I use it for caching page results. So I'll have 5 or 6 queries that I need data from on a page, and I want to cache all of them under a single key. Then I just return an array of results. And then I use list to populate my blade template array, my blade template values.
mm,
Because cache can only have one key per result set, but you can return an array as a result set.
mm,
So
sure.
that's where I use it all the time. And having gotten over the last year or so more and more used to doing this, now when I see the short format or the list format, they both just sort of make sense to me in my head. I don't have to think about what's going on here. But when I first started seeing it, I absolutely did have to think, like, what is this doing?
Yeah,
I
that's me. It's like
I think
I'm
Thomas just called me a junior developer too.
Yeah, I'm struggling with it, but like again, looking at how they used it in the for each loop, I really like that. Like the using it in the they use the list function, the for each loop, where instead of doing in their example, instead of doing people as person and then echoing person name, person age, they do people as they do this list function, name, is the variable name, age is the variable age, and then they just echo name and age out. And I really like that. That seems not necessarily cleaner. It just seems easier to read to me. But yeah, if you look at up top I mean, I think it's like the first example they have. Had I not known what I was reading under destructing associative arrays, I guess it wasn't the first example. Uh, had I not known what I was reading and I had just looked at this in a code base, I would have to take a moment and say, "Wait, what am I looking at? This is backwards."
See, I didn't realize you could do this with associative arrays like this.
Right? That's cool, isn't it?
Yeah,
The
this
thing is, I've
article
seen it before, but I haven't used it, so then I forgot about it.
this article has some cool use cases. I just worry about when the use case starts getting more and more creative, it becomes less and less readable.
Hmm.
I mean, that's my big issue is when they do it in loops like that.
Yeah.
That
Now, I
gets
don't
hard to read.
I don't understand the last example they have where they do it and then they do ABC. Is that just assuming first, second, third position?
Yeah, so the thing with the loops is that it's only on uh, indexed arrays. It's not on associative.
Okay.
But maybe it's unassociative, but then you can't get the key. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Like they don't do. Yeah, obviously, you don't use keys on this, and I would need to see what that last one does. Actually, I'm not really sure.
That's
But
why. That's why I love
the
a
last one
recent
doesn't make sense because there's no, it's echo ABC, but there's no like concatenation or anything between those variables. So
All right.
Yeah,
Huh.
that might be bad code.
yeah, because that's not making any sense.
But I need a reason to use this now. It's like this
Yep,
is one of those things. Huh?
parser.
Yeah.
Now I'll tell you what I don't need an excuse to use. Arrow functions.
Arrow function. That came up in my feed today as well.
I like this one. I've been following this vote because over the last 3 months now, I've been developing in JavaScript, and everything in JavaScript now is short arrow functions.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gotten so used to seeing it and using it that having it in PHP just makes sense to me.
I think that's was the opinion of a lot of people. Is yeah, it's just so many other languages are using this now. This just makes sense.
Now,
Where do you see it in JavaScript? Because I don't recall ever really seeing this. So I've had to read through this thing, like the RFC, which I didn't realize Eric had a card up here already, and just reading through it a few times, trying to figure it out because it wasn't very clear to me.
in JavaScript, it's an EX or an ES6 only syntax, so you won't see it a whole lot in production. But stuff like Babel will want to see it and will convert it into the ES5 format for you.
Right.
So
Okay.
all of my coding in React is using the ES6 short syntax because it just cuts clutter down. It allows you to do ternary style stuff, real short, concise stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say for our PHP developers who are listening, how would you explain this if you hadn't seen it before? Because I don't even know how to. I mean, it's like the rocket hash, and how
So
do you explain a short arrow function?
a short arrow function starts with fn and then parentheses, and within the parentheses you've got all your standard parameters. But then instead of just jumping straight into curly braces, you go to equals greater than, and you can contain your function in that. Now, if you're going to go multi-line, then you need to have your parentheses or your curly braces there.
Right, because basically everything to the right of the rocket hash is your return, right? You don't add the return. It's just whatever is there, it gets returned.
Right. Now, the thing with these kinds of short tags is that they can be type hinted in a peculiar way, where normally if you were to assign a function to a variable, then you could pass that variable into something that expected a function and then returned your expected parameters. So instead of arguments, they're actually properties of the function.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of what you see in JavaScript treats it that way, where if you're going to use the short arrow functions, then you're using that function as a set of properties to be acted upon and not a function to be called with properties.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a style or a habit, but there is a huge difference in the PHP version of this. The scope changes.
Oh.
Anywhere that you use an arrow function in PHP 7.4 is on the same scope of where you're using it. So you no longer have to pass in previously defined variables. There's no use person, there's no use user, attribute, etc. It's already in the scope of the function.
Right.
And that's the part that is going to trip people up real fast if they start using this without knowing what they're doing. But it's also the real strength of the thing in shortening the complexity of stuff, is that using the short arrow functions in PHP is going to act the same as functions do in JavaScript, where the scope is the same as the function's declaration point. And this
that's actually one of the things that really draws me to it is I love that not having to worry about passing in what I need to use within that function. It'll just be on that same scale. So
yeah, but you're going to have to change the way you think about naming your variables in these sub functions. You're going to have to make sure that you don't override variables on the same scope. So there is some sensitiveness to this. You have to be more careful, because there's plenty of times where I use functions within a function scope or variables within a function scope that have the same name as one of the values they're returning. And in this case, you wouldn't even bother returning your values. If you're using a short tag, you would just set the values and then exit your function. You wouldn't have to bother returning them because they're setting them in the same scope. So this is going to make debugging some stuff pretty tricky if you use it.
So you can actually just set the value. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's in the same scope. So you can set the value, you can override the value, you can unset the value, you can increment I when you don't mean to increment I.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to make some debugging a little bit tougher if you start using this format, because the scope is a scope that PHP developers are not used to. It totally breaks our current standard of thinking of scope in functions.
Be interesting.
And this is coming in 7.4, it looks like.
Yep, this is going to be in 7.4. And I expect to see it in Laravel 5.9. It's my one jab for the episode.
Did you know there's a new PHP internals podcast?
I saw that.
That's actually referenced in this article as well. They said they talk about this new function coming in.
I'm gonna have to start listening to that, because I saw it and just started drooling. Oh, that's delicious.
Yeah.
Because I can't keep up with the PHP internals messages. I just can't.
I'm the same way. It's just such a flood of conversation in there. I'm happy to see it. I'm happy to see there's so much activity and there's so many people dedicated to it, but I can't keep up with it. Occasionally topics, I get the email and topics will come out in with a interesting enough subject line where it'll catch my attention. But for the most part, I just can't keep up with it. Too much conversation in there.
Yeah, and it's been getting a lot of new people that don't know what the group is for, dropping in and saying, "Hey, I need Karma to post my idea on the wiki," and you're like, "Wrong place, asshole."
I love that every now and then you'll see somebody post, "Hey, can somebody help me with this for each loop?" It's like, wait, what? No, please get out of this list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys see that Chewbacca's gone?
Yes.
What? Chewbacca.
Peter Mayhew died.
Oh, when did this happen?
Like 8 o'clock.
Oh, it just happened today?
Yeah.
Oh.
Just saw something that reminded me.
He'll be easier to CGI back in the movies than Carrie Fisher is.
That's true. Yeah. Oh, I'm seeing this on Twitter now. That's sad. Chewy. Well, at least he got. I mean, come on, the guy had a great run, right? I mean.
Oh yeah.
What a life.
Especially for a guy his size,
Yeah.
When you're that tall, you're not supposed to live as long as he did.
He could go to geek events and get all the attention he wants because people knew who he was, but his day-to-day life, he could be, like a normal Joe, Yeah. Now, was it the same Chewie through all the movies, even the latest one that released?
Yep.
Or they
Yeah.
same Chewie, huh?
Always Peter.
Well, that's good for him, man. He had a good life. 74. Damn it, those age ranges from where I am to where they are, it's getting shorter and shorter, and it's freaking me out, man. Freaking me out.
Yeah.
I'm definitely on the downhill slide of life right now. Oh man, 74. Jeez.
Yeah, my wife.
Downhill side of life, but you kicked my ass in racquetball this week.
Please, kicked your ass.
He's a
Barely held
slugger.
together. Oh man, I think
I got-
ultimately I lost. Pretty sure.
I got one last thing here.
Let's
Yeah, but
hear
I
it.
cheated. I wore you out first.
I cheated. I stayed young and fit. I stayed fit. I eat healthy. I cheated. Yeah, that's how I beat you.
My children aren't teenagers.
Exactly.
Uh,
What's your last thing, Thomas?
Microsoft became a $1 trillion company this week.
Get your head around that for a moment. $1 trillion. I thought I had trouble processing a billion when they were a $1 billion company. Like what it looks like to be a billionaire. And now you have a company worth $1 trillion.
So for people who haven't gone through this mental exercise, $100 million. If you have $1 million times 100, you have $100 million. If you have $1 million times 1,000, you have $1 billion. If you have $1 billion times 1,000, you have $1 trillion. So you would have to be a millionaire.
It means you could give $1 billion to 999 of your favorite friends, and you'd still be a billionaire.
Yeah, it's a psychotic amount of money. But the big news on this is that this is all on the heels of the new CTO. What is her name?
Ooh, I'm not aware of this one.
Chief Financial Officer Amy Hood.
Oh, that's a CFO, not a CTO.
Sorry, my bad. This is all on the heels of Ballmer leaving Microsoft and pivoting Windows 10 to basically favor the user more than to favor the platform itself. Big moves in open source, such as buying GitHub, releasing Visual Studio Code for free on all platforms. It would appear that Microsoft's sort of open initiative has succeeded in making them the $1 trillion company that they are today.
Wow.
And it speaks very well of Windows 11 being a Unix-based system.
So we talked a little bit last week about you potentially grabbing a Windows machine. How do you feel about that idea now?
My computer, I did some research, updated my graphics drivers, and when I rebooted to update my graphics drivers and get them running, the BIOS auto-updated itself.
No, that can't happen.
I shit you not.
Okay, so let's catch up. If you're not a regular listener, last week Thomas was complaining about a laptop he has, which is a Dell that runs Ubuntu. It ran Ubuntu from day one. He didn't install Ubuntu on top of anything, so he was struggling with his technical world. And okay,
so when I booted it back up, things were significantly better. Couldn't tell you which part of what happened because I made a change and then the computer itself made a change that I don't know what it was, what it did, or why. And there's no way for me to roll that back.
I don't even know a computer could update its own BIOS well, see, that shows you how old school I am, because to me it used to be like a manual process where
Right.
for those 15 minutes of your life, you're like, power, please don't go out, or I've lost my entire.
You had to get it on a floppy disk that had to be formatted a specific way, and it didn't
Yeah.
do a checksum or anything. It just ran whatever was on the fucking disk. You could put a virus on there, and it would just be like, "All right, great, buddy, cool, thanks."
This looks right. I'll just put this right here.
Things are very, very different in the BIOS world now. Most motherboard BIOS support mouse and keyboard. Many of them have graphical, like full color graphical user interfaces. And a lot of corporate laptops or corporate systems, as well as gamer-oriented systems, allow you to update over the network. Some motherboards even supporting updating over Wi-Fi from within the BIOS. Now, I wasn't aware that there were motherboards that did this check on a reboot to update their own BIOS.
This was an automatic thing. You didn't trigger it.
Yeah, it just I restarted the system to see if the graphics change worked, and bam, it said, "Don't turn off your computer. I'm flashing your BIOS." And I just went, Jesus Christ, what are you doing that for? So I'm not sure exactly what happened.
But you're happy with your laptop again?
No.
That's a bit too strong of a word.
It's better. One of the things to remember is that this laptop is a Synergy client, and Synergy clients are very susceptible to one of the two computers locking up the process that controls the cursor. If you're real old school, you remember that plugging in a mouse used to ask you to allocate an IRQ for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the case anymore. However, mice still use direct mapping through IRQ. So they still are a hardware level function. So they're one of the last things to fail. When a computer is pegged at 100%, your mouse will still usually move around on the screen because it's directly accessing some hardware level that other things aren't. But when you use Synergy, that abstraction goes away, so it becomes a software pointer, and so it gets a little bit of responsive issues. And so I'm still having issues with that, which just means it means any number of things on the system. But for the most part, it's not a hair pulling out situation anymore. Although while editing last week's podcast, Audacity did crash, which sucked. added another 30 minutes to the editing time.
That's John's world, man. Every blue moon, John tries to edit something, and it just becomes this like cycle of Audacity crashing on him.
I think in the future, I'm gonna skip Audacity for editing and go to some other project that has a better stability record. Now, Audacity does recover itself pretty well when it crashes.
Yeah,
but follow the directions when you're trying to, because I didn't. I was trying to recover. It didn't work. I quit out, and it says, "Do you want to save?" I said no. I go back.
Cleaned up all your temp files.
Everything was gone.
Yeah.
I go and look online. It's like, don't say no here. I'm like, crap.
Well, my issue is actually, it locked the whole system up. So I had to open up my laptop and get on the physical keyboard for the laptop and open up a terminal to do a kill all on Audacity.
Yeah.
If you don't really know Linux, you wouldn't know that Control Alt F2 drops you into a non-X Windows shell, and that Control Alt F7 drops you back into X Windows. So I'm glad I know that, because I've had to do that a couple times.
Yeah.
But
I keep thinking I want to. So we have we have Apples, John and I, and I keep thinking I want to try GarageBand, because GarageBand is like built into Apple now, and I mean it's got to be good, right? It's people used to pay money for this software.
supposed to be very good.
But I've gotten my workflow so dialed in with Audacity now. I really don't want to mess with it.
I know what you mean, but I did video editing in high school, and there are times I very much miss the Adobe Premiere system of editing.
Mm. Mm.
I really liked using Final Cut even for audio.
Yeah.
Really,
Yeah.
in Final Cut, it's still you still have to pay for it, right? It's not.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
not one. Yeah.
It's still like $250 or $300.
Although I think they went to a subscription model, just like everything else.
Mm.
There's a free trial.
Oh,
You can,
But last time
Yeah.
yeah,
last time I bought
$300.
Final Cut, it was $1,000.
Oh my God, do you remember? Yeah, software. Yeah. Well, that's what Photoshop used to be like that, right? $1,200, $1,400.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this was when $1,400 was a lot of money.
Well, I remember there was that section in Fry's that had
still a lot
the
of money.
Adobe products, and they had the $3,000 bundle that had all the Adobe products on it. And oof.
Yeah, you get like Dreamweaver and all the whole stack. Yeah.
Shockwave,
Yeah,
Macromedia.
I miss the Flash stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's where I miss missing working in the enterprise, man. You just put in an invoice like, no, we have to have this. It's like, oh, $2,500 for software? Sure, seems reasonable. Somebody will rubber stamp it and
Oh, I bought a $5,000 firmware for a Cisco router.
Jesus Christ, how is that justifiable?
It added the ability to drop in a WAN card and run a specific T3 something.
You couldn't buy a whole new router for that?
Uh-uh. The router,
Good
they
God.
yeah, Cisco used to run their router business like a licensing business where you bought the router that had support for all of the hardware, but the functionality was locked behind firmwares that you
remember
had to
that.
purchase. I mean, that's
right.
we're talking 1998, so it's been
Yeah.
a long time. God, I
Mm.
just made myself feel so old. But yeah, no, we dropped some major money on a firmware upgrade for a router because that was just what you did. It was cheaper to mass produce the hardware and then lock the feature set behind firmware.
Yep. All right. Well, I don't know. I feel like this has been a good geek out coding show, man.
It
Should
has.
we wrap it up? Or?
We got PHP features. We got lock picking. We've got movies.
We
It's-
started on a low note so that we could only go up. Thank
Glad
you.
you brought that back up.
Good job, man. Good job.
So
All right.
this will be our demo reel for our podcast from now on. Yeah, this is what we do. It's
This
great.
is it. Episode
this is-
150. We have to put a star on this one.
It's always like this.
It's a special episode. When does this ever end? Jesus, episode 150. We need to wrap this up at some point. We need to go in retirement.
How about an episode 150?
How about when everyone moves to Colorado Springs and we start Colorado Dev?
John doesn't want to hear that right now. John's already freaking out with the idea I may be moving.
Too soon.
Yeah,
Too soon.
We had a quite the conversation about prices in San Diego, and man, it ain't getting better.
It's getting hard, man. It's really difficult to justify living in California right now.
You know,
Yeah, so
Not you walk outside and it's perfect.
as
Talking about justify.
sure.
I had a beautiful thunderstorm for 5 minutes here today. It was nice.
All right, we're going in the wrong direction. We need to end on a high note.
All right.
So I think this is going to wrap it up for episode 150. I'm one of your mini hosts, Eric Van Johnson.
I'm John Congdon.
I'm your favorite host, Tom Rideout.
Keep it
Keep it ugly.
We didn't do Patreons or anything today. We're horrible.
Stopping recording.
Stopping recording. I have an in studio guest with me tonight.
Is it
her.
a puppy?
No, it's his wife.
It's my wife. It's not a puppy.
Don't tell her I said the puppy thing.
I almost said something at the beginning of the episode because I heard her in the background.
Yeah, I'm like, we're recording.
1 second.
I almost said something like, "Did you violate my rules and bring somebody into the office?"
Yeah, trying to spend some quality time together, you know.
Yeah, this is quality time.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I don't know what she was thinking, but I appreciate it. I feel like it's supportive.
She wanted to go beat your high score.
Yeah, don't think that's not what she's been trying to do. I hear her yell out there every now and then. Son of a bitch! So for listeners who might be hanging out with us, we have a classic arcade game here at the DiegoDev offices, and my wife and I have a long running battle on Centipede where she had the top position for like the longest time. I mean, it was she was like had the number one position for a while, and I finally was able to bump her off, and now it's on her to regain the lead. We have fun, we enjoy. Nobody uses the arcade game machine. Nobody uses it anymore. Disappointing.
Isn't that your job to use it?
I use it.
I like this lockpick set, man. $25 well spent.
I've been thinking about doing that. So you got the clear lock too, huh?
Yeah, I would recommend. There's another one on Amazon that has a clear lock, but it also has a sleeve that goes over the lock. I would recommend that.
You realize you can use a Post-it note.
Sure, but I like how complete the whole kit
Oh,
is.
the sleeve is so it hides it so you don't cheat. Is that?
Yeah. But see,
I get you.
This is where I'm at now with my skills, is I can, at least with this lock, is I can get it like that.
Ah, cool.
So pretty quick, you know. And the thing about this lock is that you learn to identify the pin number that you're on blindly,
Mm,
and learn how a binding pin affects the rest of the pin sets, and how your pressure on the tension wrench really matters. So for me, it's all about learning the feel of something not being set correctly.
mm-hmm.
So even though I can open this lock in like 3 seconds, I like to take out the little feeler hook pin, the really individual pin setting pick, and just go one at a time and really feel how the spring and the tension affects every little tiny detail of it. It's a nice thing for when I'm doing like database seeding or some process that's just running. I can just pop this over and just start practicing with it, playing with it. It's pretty cool.
Cool, man. I think we need some for the office. We need to do like a Sherlock Holmes thing where we just have a whole grid of locks that we have to pick.
Well, I started building an Amazon wish list that I called the bug out bag, and that's not quite what it is. It's more of just a list of inexpensive trinkets that I've never been able to validate buying for myself. like a keyboard that's this big with a functional trackpad, you know, and Bluetooth and all that stuff, and then like a couple flash drives and a bunch of charging cables and a magnetic. That's one of the things is a magnetic field detector piece of paper. But just lots of stuff.
So you saw the recent MKBHD, yeah, and Diana Cowan, physics girl.
No.
Oh, what's that? I know who
physics.
they are, but what was the?
Yeah, they did the whole thing with that magnetic sheet where testing fields of different things like phones and. I assume that's where you got
No,
that
no.
from.
I saw this from a guy who does hacker conventions, and it was an interview on Hack 5 where they were like, "What's in your bag?" And he listed off all this cool stuff, and I was like, I know all that cool stuff, and I've always wanted that cool stuff. I've just never been able to validate it. And I decided, I have a tool bag for like around the house type shit, but I don't have a bag of just all the gadgets and stuff I've always wanted. And all this stuff is in the range of $5 to $25, and I've wanted it for 10 or 15 years. So why don't I have it? What a dumb thing to not have for myself. Where it's like
Treat yourself.
Yeah, like an infrared thermometer, one of those non-contact ones. It's $15, and I've wanted one in like random situations where I'm just like, I need to know this thing. Something's wrong here. What is it?
Those
I
are
just
actually
don't.
really.
I don't have them. I don't have these dumb things that are cheap on hand because I just go, well, I don't really need that $15 thing. But now I can treat myself every once in a while to something that just gets thrown in the kit. And they've got these super cool tactical backpacks too.
Those are $5 to $10 or $5 to $20. So I
They
have
are.
one. I got one that was your buddy you work with, Mark. I saw his.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh shit, I need one of those. I used it. I still have it. It's not my everyday driver now, but those things are fantastic. There's so many pockets on them. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of Chinese knockoffs on Amazon that are like $25.
Yeah, don't do that.
There's some good ones. I like them, and I always look at the reviews. But the one that I want is $31.99, and it's got almost 1,000 5-star reviews.
Yeah, maybe you'll get lucky. I don't know. All right, guys. I'm wrapping it up.
Yep.
All right, I think that was a good episode.
Yep. Everybody watching the stream, thanks. Stopping the stream.